So I would like to welcome everyone this evening. And so this week is week number 8. So we're coming close to the end of our meditation course. And this week we're going to be doing death contemplation. So again, this is going to be similar to last week in that this is more of a wisdom contemplation. And this is actually one that the Buddha really, really encouraged people to do. And he encouraged people to do it often, to do it frequently. And I know for a lot of people at first, it's like, wow, that's, death contemplation. That's sounds pretty dark and morbid. And but actually when it's done properly, it actually gives the kind of the opposite feeling. You feel very light, very happy. It's a very freeing feeling to do death contemplation. But with similar to the body contemplation last week, is one of the things we just have to be aware of is if we are finding that it's we're not getting those results, we are finding we are kind of getting a little depressed or a little angry, or we're feeling a little kind of like hopeless in life, like, oh, what's the point of anything, I'm just going to die. Then it's either maybe we're doing it a bit wrong, or we maybe need to focus on doing more things to brighten and happy the mind first. So such as loving kindness meditation or just breath meditation, and then we can come back to it. So with a lot of these things, we're always watching the results we're getting from it. Um, so uh, so I remember once listening to this talk about death and death contemplation by someone, and I remember just thinking, wow, that was dark. And it was like, yeah, it was definitely not being picked up and taken in the right way. So again, with a lot of these practices, there's always the simile comparing them to a knife, and you want to pick it up in the right way. Pick it up by the handle, don't pick it up by the blade. So um so there's a lot of benefits to doing uh death contemplation. It's sometimes called like the king of meditations, because it can have such a profound effect on us doing it, and doing it right from the beginning when we start it. So some of the benefits we can have is, one is we stop fearing death and stop seeing death as such an abstract. And it's not stop fearing death as in, we're just gonna go walk out in the middle of traffic type thing and become really reckless. But it's we start to really see death as, something that is an inevitability, is part of life. And so a lot of us, we know that on the intellectual level. So we can think about, we know, okay, yeah, I'm going to die. But on the deep down level, on the felt level, and really deep down, we really still don't have that. A lot of us still have this kind of feeling or perception that we're always going to live, and death is just so far off, or feels so far off and so abstract. uh, a number of years ago, maybe about 10 years ago, I went with a group of monks to Sirirat Hospital in Thailand. So this is like the biggest and the best of the state hospitals in Thailand. And they were putting on this, some of the doctors there were putting on this presentation for the monks for, body contemplation and death contemplation. And one of the doctors, she was just about to retire. So retirement is 60. And she was telling us that she has the exact number of how many families she's had to inform that their loved one has died. And I think the number was over 2,000. And so she had the exact number, and she said every time she's told a family, the family's been surprised and they've been devastated. And because again, we don't really, like, deep down, it hasn't hit us deep down that death is something which can happen to us or happen to loved ones. So when we start doing death contemplation, we're going to start understanding this. So it's not going to be such a shock, such a trauma when it happens to us or someone else. There's that saying, when you really practice, you die before you die. So you understand death before you actually die. Another one of the things doing death contemplation does is it really cut out our uh, uh, or show what things are important, and cut out the way we pick up these little things that may not be so important, and it can help cut that out. We see that they're not important. So, if say you're driving in traffic and someone cuts you off, instead of getting really angry about this, you're like, okay, well, what does that matter? All these little small trifling things that a lot of times we take to be really important or make into a big issue. If we're doing contemplating death, these just don't seem so important anymore. And it's much easier to let go of a lot of these things. And the other is it can really give uh, rise to a sense of urgency in practice. Because again, like I was saying, we always have this kind of feeling, like in the felt level, that there's always going to be tomorrow. There's always going to be more time. So, okay, yeah, I don't need to worry about it. I'll do it later. I don't need to worry about it. I'll do it later. I'll just do this first. And but it isn't necessarily like that. There is limited time, and we don't know when we're going to die. So when we really start, contemplating death and thinking about this, we see that it can give urgency. Oh, maybe I should do this now. Maybe I should pick this up now instead of putting it off to later. So death contemplation, it's also one we can really do throughout our day. It's one we can do. It's very easy to do throughout the day, and we don't have to just do it while we're sitting meditation. It's great to do while sitting meditation, but we can do it all the time. So, throughout your days, when these things are coming up, you can just ask yourself, uh, is this important? What what if today is my last day to die? If when I die, will this be important? And a lot of times just asking yourself questions like this, it can really cut that out. It can really cut that proliferation out. You're thinking and you're planning for the future. Oh, I can do this and that and that. And it's just proliferation, just thinking. And you think, well, what if I died tomorrow? What if I died today? What if today is my last day? And it can cut out a lot of this thinking. But again, you don't want to take it a little too far and be like, well, I could die at any minute. Death can come at any time. So, what's the point in having a shower? Or, well, I can die any time. What's the point in saving for retirement? So again, that's one of those ones where we've kind of picked it up the wrong way. I remember hearing this story. It was about a Tibetan hermit, and they were living up in a cave by themselves. And every day when they'd walk out to go get water, there was a thorn bush, and the thorns would get caught on his robes. And he'd think, oh, I should take that thorn bush out, but I'm just going to die. So what's the point of that? And that is picking it up the wrong way, I think, because there is still, you have to do life, you have to still live life and stuff, but we're just living it with more wisdom and with this awareness that today could be our last day. So for a lot of us, we, again, especially if we're not too old, uh we always think, it's abstract, it's off in the future, it's for old people. But, there's so many people die at any age. We've had monks in their 30s have accidents and die. And, we've all known people who, something has happened, car accidents are just a reality, especially in Winnipeg. um, and so yeah, so we can just keep practicing throughout our day, sometimes just reminding ourselves, death is certain, the time of it is uncertain. But we're also going to learn about how to do it for our formal meditation. So this is one where there's a lot of different ways, a lot of different techniques of how to do death contemplation. Same with a lot of these other ones like body contemplation, where there are, several different ways to do it. So we're going to focus on just one or two of them today. So one of the things we can do is we can just bring up this um, start contemplating certain things. So contemplating the inevitability of death and just reminding ourselves and thinking, death is certain. I can die at any time, and just keeping this in mind, thinking it, And sometimes when we're meditating, similar to when we did body contemplation, and we can bring up, we could just mentally be reciting, you know, hair of the head to keep us on that contemplation. We can do the same here. We can use, either the Pali for it, Maranang, Maranang, or we can just say, death is certain, the time of death is not certain. And then we can also start contemplating, the time of death is not certain. Because again, it can happen at any time. This is just something we don't know. And it's always a surprise to people, or usually a surprise to people when it comes. So we can just prepare ourselves that, this can happen, and it can happen at any time. Bhante Gunaratana, this Sri Lankan monk in America, very, very respected. I think he's close to 100 if he hasn't passed 100 already. And he was talking about one time he was on a flight, and if I remember correctly, it made it looked like it was going down, and the oxygen masks dropped and everyone on the plane was panicking. And Bhante Gunaratana said for him it was a really great experience. Everyone else is all traumatized by it and did a really rough landing and stuff, and he said for him it was great. He got this really great opportunity to contemplate death, because when you see it coming, it's much more, all of a sudden it becomes real to you. You see these people, once they've had like a near death experience, like almost get hit by a car or something, all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, and it can profoundly change people. And so he got this great opportunity to contemplate death. And then when it did have this rough landing, those inflatable slides came out the side of it, and he had never been on a slide before, so he had a lot of fun doing that too. So so for him it was a great time. And so one of the other things we can do is we can also do a bit of visualization too, and visualize ourselves dying, and visualize the experience of it. Either we're there, maybe in bed, have people around us, or maybe we are in different situations, like again, in a plane which goes down, or a car accident, and just kind of visualize and understand. Or some people like to do it and, contemplate their body and what happens to it after they die, and how the body breaks down. So these are kind of two we can work on today. But again, this is one of those ones. Just really watch yourself with it. You can also contemplate it for other people, for loved ones and stuff. But be careful that you're not getting yourself depressed, or you're getting yourself down, and it's in this kind of like, fantasizing about ways to die. This is more contemplating and stuff. And also, if you're doing it to someone else, don't, remember, this is from a place of trying to develop wisdom, a place of loving kindness. This isn't, contemplating, oh, that guy I hate at work, oh, he's going to die eventually. I hope it's soon. I don't know when, but I hope it's soon. So we're we're not going in that direction with it. If you do find this happening, or you do find that you're getting, some negativity coming up, um just you can either just try to change the way you're doing it, or maybe just take a break from it and do those things which brighten the mind and happy the mind. Or you find you're in a period where you're kind of really down and depressed, it might not be the best. For some it might work, but it might not be the best. So that might be a time you want to really just brighten the mind and happy the mind, with some loving kindness or breath meditation. Okay, so we can we'll get started on some guided meditation. So so we can all start by getting into our meditation posture, getting into a comfortable posture. And we can start to bring our awareness into the present moment, becoming aware of our experience here and now in the present moment. And we can start to bring our awareness into the bodies, being aware of our experience in our bodies here and now. We can move our awareness to the top of the head. And for the next couple minutes, we can just move our awareness down through the body, allowing any place our awareness touches to just gently relax, to open up, allowing all that tension and tightness and stress to just melt away. And we can just gently start to bring our awareness to the breath, becoming aware of the sensation of breathing, being aware of the in-breath and aware of the out-breath. And, and we can start to contemplate death. We can start to contemplate this body, this life is impermanent. We can contemplate that death is certain. And if we find it helpful, we can just mentally recite a word like Maranang or death is certain, just to help keep our minds on our contemplation. We can contemplate that death is just part of nature. It's a natural process that happens to all living beings. And we are no different. We can also contemplate that the time of death is uncertain. It can come at any time. So if our minds have started to wander off, thinking about the past, or thinking about the future, we can just ask ourselves, what does that matter if I was to die right now? What would be important right now? We can just contemplate. Death is certain. I am of the nature to die. So now, as we're coming to the end of our meditation sitting, we can just gently bring our minds out of our meditation. And when we feel ready, we can just gently open our eyes and finish our meditation sitting for this evening. So this evening, I did a little shorter meditation time. I think just because for a lot of people, when you're new to something like this, it can be a little tough, and tough to keep on that contemplation for a while. But and it's one you can do. You don't have to do the whole meditation sitting time. It's one you can do for, part of the time or when you feel it's necessary. And you can do it as a support for your practice. It can help the mind from, especially if you're someone who has the mind who does a lot of like proliferating, a lot of fantasizing. There's some of us who, we're always kind of thinking big, thinking off into the future, this and that, kind of we can go on those flights of fancy with the thinking. So this type of contemplation like this can really help us bring us down and bring us out of that. It's actually for the monks in a lot of our chants we do in our morning and evening chanting. There's a few different places where we have these chants that, I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. And again, we use those two as a reflection and as an encouragement just to remember to keep practicing, keep putting our effort into our practice, keep doing those things which are beneficial for us. So I'd like to offer this as a little bit of a reflection for this evening.